Good evening, London. Allow me first to apologize for this.
The emergency channel!
I do, like many of you, appreciate the comforts of the everyday routine, the security of the familiar, the tranquility of repetition.
Bloody hell.
I enjoy them as much as any bloke. But in the spirit of commemoration,
Who's that, Mum?
whereby those important events of the past, usually associated with someone's death or the end of some awful bloody struggle, are celebrated with a nice holiday, I thought we could mark this November the 5th, a day that is sadly no longer remembered, by taking some time out of our daily lives to sit down and have a little chat. There are, of course, those who do not want us to speak.
Let me
I
think.
suspect even now, orders are being shouted into telephones, and men with guns will soon be on their way.
It's Chancellor Sutler.
Damn it!
Why? Because while the truncheon may be used in lieu of conversation, words will always retain their power. Words offer the means to meaning, and for those who will listen, the enunciation of truth. And the truth is, there is something terribly wrong with this country, isn't there?
You designed it, sir. You wanted it foolproof. You told me every television in London.
Cruelty and injustice, intolerance and oppression. And where once you had the freedom to object, to think and speak as you saw fit, you now have censors and systems of surveillance coercing your conformity and soliciting your submission.
We need cameras.
How did this happen? Who's to blame? Well, certainly there are those who are more responsible than others, and they will be held accountable. But again, truth be told, if you're looking for the guilty, you need only look into a mirror. I know why you did it. I know you were afraid. Who wouldn't be? War, terror, disease. There were a myriad of problems which conspired to corrupt your reason and rob you of your common sense. Fear got the best of you, and in your panic you turned to the now High Chancellor Adam Sutler. He promised you order, he promised you peace, and all he demanded in return was your silent, obedient consent.
Inspector, you're almost through.
Last night, I sought to end that silence. Last night, I destroyed the Old Bailey to remind this country of what it has forgotten. More than 400 years ago, a great citizen wished to embed the 5th of November forever in our memory. His hope was to remind the world that fairness, justice, and freedom are more than words. They are perspectives. So if you've seen nothing, if the crimes of this government remain unknown to you, then I would suggest that you allow the 5th of November to pass unmarked. But if you see what I see, if you feel as I feel, and if you would seek as I seek, then I ask you to stand beside me 1 year from tonight, outside the gates of Parliament. And together we shall give them a 5th of November that shall never, ever be forgotten.
The 2006 Wachowski brothers film V for Vendetta, like many sci-fi movies, is set in a dystopian future. We never use that word dystopian anywhere except in talking about movies set in the future, do we? But in this one, the British government has managed to take totalitarian control of the population, keeping all opposition in check, in part through an indiscriminate use of violence, but largely by just constantly feeding the population a steady diet of propaganda. The very clever superhero turned anti-establishment anarchist seeks to break the power of the government and restore self-determination, freedom of thought, and freedom of speech to the population. V, as you saw in the brief clip of the movie, is disguised in a Guy Fawkes mask, and not to give too much of the movie away if you haven't seen it, he does succeed where the original Guy Fawkes failed 400 years ago in blowing up the Parliament. Though inspiring in the sense of encouraging people to see through media propaganda, to reject the excesses of government, the film is admittedly very violent, hardly a date movie, Tanner. Not that I'm anyone to give you advice about how to make that kind of relationship work, but the movie in its premise is entirely preposterous. Still, that mask has become a favorite trademark of libertarians and protesters. It was seen in the protests of the Arab Spring in 2011, later that year in the Occupy Wall Street movement. We've seen it used in videos released by the famous hacker group Anonymous, which has sought to disrupt governments, news media, and even the Church of Scientology and the Westboro Baptist Church. They get a standing ovation for that. They are also associated with the theft of some materials that have later been released through WikiLeaks. Now, WikiLeaks has been back in the news in the build-up to this Tuesday's presidential election, as emails pertaining to Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party have evidently been hacked by the Russian government and leaked through Julian Assange's WikiLeaks, and then ironically used by our own FBI in partnership with the Trump campaign. It's been a real weird fall for an election season, and thankfully we're just 2 days away from it all being over.
Amen.
Yeah. In the movie, the British government calls V a terrorist. The propaganda-laden media calls him a coward. And the secret police are seen pulling black bags over people's heads. Anyone who dares to either criticize or question the government's authority is black-bagged, and they disappear to be interrogated and tortured and inevitably killed. In real life, our most noted whistleblowers of recent years have been Edward Snowden, who worked for the U.S. government in a secret and evidently illegal data mining effort until he leaked information about the program, and Chelsea Manning, the military whistleblower who revealed classified information that was evidence of serious war crimes committed by American soldiers. And Julian Assange, an Australian who runs WikiLeaks. Presently, Snowden is in hiding in Russia, avoiding being black-bagged by our CIA and whisked away to one of our secret prisons where he would surely have been tortured and interrogated. Manning is in prison, and Julian Assange has been virtually imprisoned in the Ecuadorian embassy in London since August of 2012, more than 4 years. Snowden saw that our government was ignoring the Fourth Amendment, ignoring probable cause, ignoring the due process of obtaining a warrant based on evidence, and they were instead gathering what they called simply big data on absolutely everyone in the nation. President Obama looked straight into the TV cameras and said that our government absolutely was not doing it. And Edward Snowden proved that they absolutely were doing it. And yet no one in the government was charged with a crime. No one. No apology was given. Snowden grabbed electronic copies of that data, headed for China, and then began leaking the data to reporters to show that our nation's federal government had simply lost its way, had driven into a moral ditch right off the rails. John Kerry tells us that Snowden is a traitor. Not the people that were listening to our phone calls and reading our emails, but the guy who told us about it is a traitor. He says that he has hurt our nation's ability to conduct intelligence gathering, that he has endangered operatives and shown terrorists our playbook. So he should have to come back and stand trial. Euphemistically, though, as Kerry says that he should leave Russia, come back to the United States and stand trial, he at the same time announces that he's guilty before he's stood trial. So I don't know who would turn down a deal like that. But to be fair, Snowden obviously took more data than he could have ever looked at in a lifetime. He doesn't know what all he took, and he has leaked information that maybe he shouldn't have leaked. He's handed useful information about our intelligence agencies, staff, and procedures to people that we probably don't want to have that information. But is he the villain in this scenario? Is he really the villain? Is he the bad guy? Which was the greater treason? Elected officials ignoring our Constitution and our Bill of Rights and invading the privacy of 300 million citizens, or one citizen who exposed the massive abuse of power by our government? And Secretary of State John Kerry thinks he should stop hiding in Russia. Snowden didn't finish college. He's a young guy. He's not savvy about international spy networks. But he does know what our government did to Private Chelsea Manning. After Chelsea Manning leaked video of our soldiers attacking children and civilians and journalists, and then after we killed them, driving over their bodies until we tore their bodies to pieces. He knows what we did to him. We put him naked in a cold cell, deprived him of sufficient water and food, and didn't even give him sheets and a blanket to sleep on his bed for a year. We tortured an American soldier, not to question him. It's not that they needed more information. Our government tortured an American soldier for revenge. And he's going to be in prison for 35 years. She is going to be in prison for 35 years. We get bent out of shape about torture of enemy combatants, but one of our own? One of us? And John Kerry thinks that Snowden should come back to the United States and stand trial when Snowden already knows that the Constitution and the Bill of Rights doesn't appear to mean much when our government wants to take revenge against someone. And that, men and women, is in the administration of a liberal Democrat. I mean, our current Republican nominee appears to think he's running for dictator. If this is how the Obama administration treats an American soldier, what could we expect in a Trump-led administration? John Kerry is not calling on the people who lied to the Congress about weapons of mass destruction or aluminum centrifuge tubes that were part of a nuclear weapon program or the secret trafficking of refined uranium. He's not asking the people who brought about the death of more than 4,000 American soldiers in a needless war to come and stand trial. Amen. Those people are being completely ignored. Dick Cheney is appearing on talk shows announcing proudly that he would do it all again. George Bush is painting portraits of world leaders that he knew and pictures of his toes in the bathtub. If Kerry wants to put someone on trial, why the whistleblower and not the war criminals? Tax-paid employees guard and escort George Bush wherever he wants to go, though I'll ask you to notice that he doesn't visit many foreign governments or foreign countries, because if he did, in many Western democracies, if he landed on their soil, he would be arrested and put on trial for war crimes. But he is free, and he is rich, and Julian Assange is stuck in the Ecuadorian embassy, Chelsea Manning is in prison, and Snowden is hiding in Russia. Now, I'm not saying that either Manning or Snowden are innocent of all wrongdoing. Both of them broke oaths. They leaked materials. I understand a government has to be able to have an intelligence program that they can trust. I'm just saying that their crimes look awfully small in comparison to the crimes that they were trying to reveal, which haven't even been discussed. I lean on my favorite historian, Howard Zinn, who said, "You are saying that our problem is civil disobedience. That's not our problem. Our problem is civil obedience. Our problem is the numbers of people all over the world who have obeyed the dictates of their leaders, of their government, and have gone to war, and millions have been killed because of obedience. Our problem is that people are obedient all over the world in the face of poverty and starvation and stupidity and war and cruelty. Our problem is that people are obedient while the jails are full of petty thieves and the grand thieves are running the government. That's our problem." There are people in the American government who want to arrest Julian Assange and bring him here and put him on trial for treason. Such is the imaginative reach of some of our Tea Party-supported elected officials. They are literally so stupid that they do not know that you cannot try an Australian for treason against the United States of America. You may think that I'm exaggerating, but no one less than Senator Joe Lieberman said on Fox News that he didn't understand why the Justice Department hasn't already charged him. Now, that was December 7, 2010, and I encourage you to look it up if you doubt me. And I've got the link to it in the text of my sermon that will appear on our website online this afternoon. A senator in the United States doesn't understand why we can't try Australians for treason. He's not hiding in the Ecuadorian embassy because of treason charges, however. We did to him what we normally do when we can't find a reason for arresting someone. He has been charged with having unprotected sex. That is, he didn't wear a condom when he said he was going to, and so he's being accused of rape. And that's just the charge that they're going to use to black bag him and put him in prison somewhere. Now, like our own Secret Service agents that got drunk and had sex with prostitutes, those guys weren't charged with anything. But Snowden would disappear into a secret prison if he set foot outside the Ecuadorian embassy. But Assange is in hiding, and he knows that if he comes out, he's not just going to have to deal with the civil matter of failing to use proper birth control in the act of sex. He is in the crosshairs of a government that has shown it has no problem with torturing people for a very long time if they dare to defy the monarchical authority of the United States of America. And the media has already long forgotten Chelsea Manning, who will now spend his entire adult life in prison, while those who committed the war crimes of murdering innocent civilians and then desecrating their bodies, they were never charged with anything. They were never even named in the media. And Manning reported it to his officers, and they covered it up. They were not charged with doing anything wrong. So we commit war crimes, and it's not a crime to commit a war crime, it's a crime to report a war crime. So though Snowden clearly did our nation a great service, he knows that if he showed his face in the United States, that his life would be over. Assange has been both a truth teller and admittedly a stupid pawn in distributing doctored Russian propaganda. But if I'd spent 4 years in the Ecuadorian embassy, I might be tempted to poke Uncle Sam in the eye myself. I cannot condone what he has done, but I am asking you to feel how complicated it is to know in the present moment who is a revolutionary, who is a noble prophet, and who is really a terrorist, and who is guilty of treason. We should remember that Jesus was executed legally by the state. The government put him on trial and found him guilty and executed him. Gandhi was repeatedly arrested and imprisoned. Martin Luther King Jr. was imprisoned, was the subject of FBI wiretappings. There were secret microphones and cameras hidden in his hotel rooms. Now, a lone assassin probably killed him, but you have to know that there was a plan for us to kill him, for our government to kill him. During their lifetimes, people didn't know if King or Gandhi, or for that matter, Jesus, were traitors or terrorists, or if they were heroes. You have to carefully filter the propaganda of the media. You have to learn to look for how the government serves its own ends first when they ignore war crimes but prosecute whistleblowers. You have to be aware of the money trail, knowing who profits from wars, who profits from destroying the environment, and who profits from employing illegal immigrants. The present moment situation that I've been asking you to pay attention to lately is the battle between Energy Transfer Partners, the multi-billion-dollar corporation now building an 1,100-mile-long Dakota Access Pipeline, and the Sioux Indian tribe that is trying to stop them from building the pipeline under the Missouri River. Though thousands have gathered in protest of the construction job, representing not just more than 100 native tribes, but also concerned citizens of all sorts, the media has maintained near perfect silence on the topic. A coalition of corporations, the North Dakota state government, and the media have said almost nothing. And most of the time when they have said something, what they said was wrong. There have been news reports that the pipeline construction was ended, when in fact they've installed stadium lights and they are busy constructing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, including holidays, even though there's false news reports that they have stopped construction. There have been reports that President Obama put out a halt on building the section that will go under the Missouri River. The truth is that President Obama has asked for the Corps of Engineers to look for other routes. And he said he wants to give the whole process a few weeks to play itself out. And if you believe he's not just waiting until after the election, then you are more naive than you ought to be. And folks, here's a hard word. You know I don't normally wear these religious vestments. Honestly, I don't like them. They are an attempt at setting ministers apart from the rest of the world, and that is, in my estimation, really just a load of, shall we say, fertilizer. But I am wearing vestments today because I want to draw on all of my ecclesial authority to talk about sin. The original route of the Dakota Access Pipeline had the pipeline going over the Missouri River at Bismarck, North Dakota. Bismarck's about 50 miles north of the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation. It's a small city, smaller even than Springfield, but like Springfield, Bismarck is more than 90% white. The residents of Bismarck objected to the pipeline going over the river in their community. Wait for it. Because they thought it might leak into their water source. Their objections got the pipeline moved out of Bismarck down to the Sioux Reservation. Now, if you've had a hard time up until now believing in white privilege, let me tell you, this is white privilege. I don't blame the residents of Bismarck for protesting the pipeline. I would have too. I think the whole pipeline project is a very bad idea. I think that taking dirty oil out of the ground is stupid on a level of being nearly suicidal. We already have too many pipelines. We already have enough oil in reserve that if we burn it all, we will raise the temperature of the world by 2 degrees, which is the no recovery point. So we already have enough fossil fuel in play to ruin our environment. But for 50,000 white folks to say, no, not here, and then sit back and watch the pipeline shoved out of their community onto the land of their brown neighbors. You know, the word damn was not originally a dirty word. Originally, it was a religious word, a literal curse used for egregious sins. Now, there's a lot of guilt to go around in this event. Energy Transfer Corporation should not be building this pipeline. The state of North Dakota should not be using a militarized police with tanks and SWAT gear to arrest journalists for writing newspaper stories or to arrest proud Native Americans who are simply trying to peacefully protect the water and responsibly report the news. But the white folks who push this toxic mess out of their own neighborhood into the poverty-stricken Indian reservation south of town, let me say this to you through our internet channels. Damn you. Damn you.
Double down.
Now, you may think I'm a little bit out of line. You may think I'm going too far. And if you think I'm crazy, let me tell you, you're not the first person to reach that conclusion. But let me try this. We've got a few other ministers in the room with us here. Assuming that we have listeners in Bismarck, what would you guys like to say to these white folk? And as I said before, I really don't like the division between clergy and laity, so let me give everyone a chance. What do you want to say about shoving this onto the reservation of the Sioux? I'm coming up there next month, and I'm bringing supplies to those who plan to camp out over the winter. I'm no V, I'm not even a Chelsea Manning or an Edward Snowden or a Julian Assange. And I'm not going to tell you that I'm not afraid, I'm not intimidated by your attack dogs that you've already turned loose on protesters. I'm not going to tell you that it doesn't scare me at the thought of being tasered or beaten with your police batons. Or did you know that now that they've arrested more than 300 people, that they're keeping proud Native Americans in dog kennels? Because they say their prisons are too full. They're putting Indians in dog kennels. That's not an accident. And I don't mean to tell you that that doesn't scare me, because I don't want to be stuck outside in a Dakota winter in a dog kennel. But I can tell you that I have a passion that is bigger than my fear. And here's what you need to know. I'm not coming alone.
Amen.
Thank you for watching our videos. We are entirely dependent on the donations of our listeners and members. We hope that you find this content to be important enough to help us to keep offering these videos to the public at no charge by becoming a regular contributor. Please click on the donate button on our website at www.spfccc.org. Thank you for your support of progressive religious programming.